Section 5 of Abraham Lincoln the Practical Mystic by Francis Grierson. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Herndon's Analysis and Testimony. W. H. Herndon, for more than 20 years the law partner of Mr. Lincoln, delivered an address in Springfield, Illinois, upon the life and character of the lamented president, which, for subtle analysis, has few equals in biographical literature. The following are excerpts. Mr. Lincoln's perceptions were slow, cold, and exact. Everything came to him in its precise shape and color. To some men the world of matter and of man comes ornamented with beauty, life, and action, and hence more or less false and inexact. No lurking illusion or other error, false in itself and clad for the moment in robes of splendor, ever passed undetected or unchallenged over the threshold of his mind, that point that divides vision from the realm and home of thought. Names to him were nothing, and titles naught, assumption always standing back abashed at his cold, intellectual glare. Neither his perceptions nor intellectual vision were perverted, distorted, or diseased. He saw all things through a perfect mental lens. There was no diffraction or refraction there. He was not impulsive, fanciful, or imaginative, but calm and precise. He threw his whole mental light around the object, and in time substance and quality stood apart. Form and color took their appropriate places, and all was clear and exact in his mind. In his mental view he crushed the unreal, the inexact, the hollow, and the sham. To some minds the world is all life, a soul beneath the material, but to Mr. Lincoln no life was individual or universal that did not manifest itself to him. His mind was his standard. His perceptions were cool, persistent, pitiless in pursuit of the truth. No error went undetected, and no falsehood unexposed if he once was aroused in search of truth. An original mind. Mr. Lincoln saw philosophy in a story and a schoolmaster in a joke. No man saw nature, fact, thing from his standpoint. His was a new and original position, which was always suggesting, hinting something to him. Nature, insinuations, hints, and suggestions were new, fresh, original, and odd to him. The world, fact, man, principle, all had their powers of suggestion to his susceptible soul. They continually put him in mind of something known or unknown. Hence his power and tenacity of what is called association of ideas. His susceptibilities to all suggestions and hints enabled him at will to call up readily the associated and classified fact and idea. Mr. Lincoln was often at a loss for a word, and hence was compelled to resort to stories and maxims and jokes to embody his idea, that it might be comprehended. So true was this peculiar mental vision of his, that though mankind has been gathering, arranging, and classifying facts for thousands of years, Lincoln's peculiar standpoint could give him no advantage over other men's labor. Hence he tore up to the deep foundations or arrangements of facts, and coined and arranged new plans to govern himself. His labor was great, continuous, patient, and all-enduring. The great books. The truth about the whole matter is that Mr. Lincoln read less and thought more than any man in his sphere in America. When young he read the Bible, and when of age he read Shakespeare. The latter book was scarcely ever out of his mind. Mr. Lincoln is acknowledged to have been a great man, but the question is, what made him great? I repeat, that he read less and thought more than any man of his standing in America, if not in the world. He possessed originality and power of thought in an eminent degree. He was cautious, cool, patient, and enduring. These are some of the grounds of his wonderful success. Not only was nature, man, fact, and principle suggestive to Mr. Lincoln, not only had he accurate and exact perceptions, but he was causative, i.e., his mind ran back behind all facts, things, and principles to their origin, history, and first cause, to that point where forces act at once as effect and cause. He would stop and pause in the street and analyze a machine. He would whittle things to a point and then count the numberless inclined planes and their pitch, making the point. Mastering and defining this, he would then cut that point back and get a broad transverse section of his pine stick and peel and define that. Clocks, omnibuses, language, paddle wheels, and idioms never escaped his observation and analysis. Before he could form any idea of anything, before he would express his opinion on any subject, he must know its origin and history, in substance and quality, in magnitude and gravity. He must know his subject inside and outside, upside and downside. He searched his own mind and nature thoroughly, as I have often heard him say. He must analyze a sensation, an idea, and words, and run them back to their origin, history, purpose, and destiny. He was most emphatically a merciless analyzer of facts, things, and principles. When all these processes had been well and thoroughly gone through, he could form an opinion and express it, but no sooner. Hence when he did speak, his utterances rang out gold-like, quick, keen, and current upon the counters of the understanding. He reasoned logically through analogy and comparison. All opponents dreaded him in his originality of idea, condensation, definition, and force of expression. And woe be to the man who hugged to his bosom a secret error, if Mr. Lincoln got on the chase of it. I say woe to him. Time could hide the error in no nook or corner of space in which he would not detect and expose it. Veneration and truth. The predominating elements of Mr. Lincoln's peculiar character were, firstly, his great capacity and powers of reason, secondly, his excellent understanding, thirdly, an exalted idea of the sense of right and equity, and fourthly, his intense veneration of what was true and good. His reason ruled all other faculties of his mind. His pursuit of the truth was indefatigable, terrible. He reasoned from his well-chosen principles with such clearness, force, and compactness that the tallest intellects in the land bowed to him in this respect. He came down from his throne of logic with irresistible and crushing force. His printed speeches proves this. But his speeches before the supreme courts of the state and nation would demonstrate it. Mr. Lincoln was an odd and original man. He lived by himself and out of himself. He was a very sensitive man, unobtrusive and gentlemanly, and often hid himself in the common mass of men in order to prevent the discovery of his individuality. He had no insulting egotism and no pompous pride, no haughtiness. He was not an upstart and had no insolence. He was a meek, quiet, unobtrusive gentleman. Not only were Mr. Lincoln's perceptions good, not only was nature suggestive to him, not only was he original and strong, not only had he great reason and understanding, not only did he love the true and good, not only was he tender and kind, but in due proportion he had a glorious combination of them all. He had no avarice in his nature or other like vice. He did not care who succeeded to the presidency of this or that Christian association or railroad convention, who made the most money, who was going to Philadelphia, when and for what, and what were the costs of such a trip. He could not understand why men struggle for such things as these. The great puzzle. One day at Washington he made this remark to me. If ever this free people, if this government itself is ever utterly demoralized, it will come from this human wriggle and struggle for office, a way to live without work. It puzzled him at Washington to know and to get at the root of this dread desire, this contagious disease of national robbery and the nation's death struggle. This man, this long, bony, wiry, sad man, floated into our country in 1831 in a frail canoe down the North Fork of the Sangamon River, friendless, penniless, powerless, and alone, begging for work in our city, ragged, struggling for the common necessities of life. This man, this peculiar man, left us in 1861, the President of the United States, backed by friends, power, fame, and all human force. Lincoln's energy and will. Energy is usually a blind force in the conduct of human affairs and the greatest with which we have to deal. History is made up of the deeds of individuals with a surplus of energy, which overflows and damages governments as floods damage lands. Will, energy, and ambition are in most cases synonymous terms. Without energy, the will breaks down, and without ambition, energy and will would prove innocuous. No one can doubt that misdirected energy was at the bottom of much that moved the Prussians, and that their ambitions were wholly material, limited to geographical boundaries. Lincoln displayed physical as well as mental energy in a supernormal degree. His will was as fixed as a mountain of adamant, while his ambition was not personal but national and universal. Only the practical mystic could direct such forces with wisdom, and as we look still closer into the mystery of his temperament, the question of pride and vanity rises, and their relation to ambition and will. In the first place, what causes ambition? Pride, answers the world, but the world is wrong. Ambition is not the result of pride, but of vanity. Solomon, the wisest and greatest man of his time, was a proud man and a wise ruler until he began to import apes and peacocks. Then vanity usurped the place of pride, and he came to the end of his temporal tether. Vanity caused Napoleon to have himself crowned Emperor of the French, and from that day his power declined. A proper sense of pride would have led him to stop where he was and refuse all further manifestations and developments of worldly honor. Pride tends to moral dignity and intellectual reticence, and that is why Lincoln blushed in the presence of the institution of slavery. His pride gave him an acute sense of shame, and his honor an acute sense of justice. Only the vain will consent to live in idleness while others slave for them. Vanity induces anything from the ridiculous to the criminal, and those controlled by it are subject to absurd statements and ridiculous actions. They cannot avoid both. Washington and Lincoln were free from the fetters of ridicule. They were imbued with a subconscious pride which stood for the whole nation. End of section 5.